I'm going to read you a story, fairy story or a legend. Maybe it could be true. It's the Pied Piper of Hamelin. In your ancestors' time, in the small town of Hamelin, which is still there was an invasion of rats, the like of which it's impossible for us to imagine, but we'll try. These rats were dirty, grey, black things. They ran as they pleased in broad daylight through the streets and swarmed all over the houses, so folk couldn't put their hand or foot down without touching something furry. When dressing in the morning, they found rats in their underpants and their petticoats and in their hats and their boots and their briefcases and their pockets. And one poor citizen had found 2 rats playing in her brassiere. When anyone wanted a bite to eat, the rats had been there first. The cook, for example, was always going into her larder and finding the rats had eaten the cheese or sucked the eggs or nibbled the bread or gnawed the rind off the best bacon. The cook had a good moan about it to the priest, who agreed with her, because he had found rats in the pockets of his cassock and had had his King James Bible chewed from Genesis to Revelations. In fact, there was nought left of his holy candle but the wick. The priest had a right old bitch about it with the poet, who agreed with him because she couldn't write poetry anymore on account of the noise. As soon as it got dark, the rats set to work, nibbling away from cellar to garret, everywhere, in the ceilings, in the floors, in the cupboards, at the doors. There was a scamper and a rummage and such a furious noise of gimlets, pincers and saws that the poet was a nervous wreck. So the townsfolk agreed to march to the town hall and find the politician to demand that something was done about the bloody rats. The politician announced that they were all in this together and he would launch an official inquiry. But at this, everyone plonked themselves down on their bottoms and refused to budge until the politician came up with a better idea. Well, they sat there from noon till dusk while the politician consulted his moral compass and looked at his legacy and mentioned his mandate, when there arrived in the town a man with an unusual face. Played on a pipe, and he sang these words. If you live, you'll see, this is me. I was born to be the rat catcher. He was an odd, gawky person, very weather-beaten, with a long, crooked nose, a droopy rat-tail moustache, and 2 great yellow piercing eyes under a felt hat with a crimson feather. He was dressed in a green jacket, red pantaloons and big leather boots. He stopped outside the town hall with his back to the church and he continued with his music, singing, if you live, you'll see, this is me. I was born to be a rat catcher. The politician came rushing from the town hall, followed by the citizens, and the Pied Piper explained that if they made it worth his while, he would get rid of all the rats, right down to the last one. He's not from round here, cried the citizens with one voice. He might trick us. Oh, we can't trust him. But the politician knew a potential vote winner when he saw one. He was determined that it was high time everyone went home and stopped blaming him for the rats. So he said, I'll give you my word of honour, Piper, that you will be properly rewarded. You should succeed in ridding our town of rats. How much do you charge? Well, by midnight tonight, I shall remove every rat from this place if you promise to pay me 1 gold sovereign per head. 1 gold sovereign for each rat, cried the citizens with one voice. Well, that will come to millions of pounds. But despite the grumbling of the people, the politician was not for turning. He shook hands with the piper And he gave him gave him a beaming smile and guaranteed to pay him 1 gold sovereign per head with the taxpayer's own money. The piper replied that he would start that evening when the moon rose. He requested that the inhabitants leave the streets empty, but said that they could look out of their windows at what was happening and that it would be an interesting event. And so, at about 9 o'clock that night, the Pied Piper reappeared by the town hall, back to the church. And as the moon rose on the horizon, he began to play his pipe. At first, the music was slow and dreamy, gentle as a caress, but then it grew more and more lively, as though it was saying, "Come and dance, come and dance." It could be heard loud and clear in the farthest alley of the town. Soon, from the depths of the cellars and sewers, from the tops of the attics and garrets, from out of the larders, cupboards, wardrobes, handbags and Wellingtons, from under the beds and tables, from every corner of every house or shop, out came the rats. And they ran out of the doors, they jumped into the street, and tap, 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 they began to dance, all squeezed together, down towards the town hall. There were so many of them, it looked like a filthy flood in full flow. When the square was completely rammed, the piper turned away and, still playing wonderfully, magically, began to walk towards the river, at the foot of the town. The rats followed eagerly until the piper stopped playing and pointed to the middle of the river where the water was flowing and swirling and foaming and whirling dangerously. "Hop, hop," he cried, "hop, hop." And straight away, without pausing for a moment, the rats began to jump in, head first, one after another. And they disappeared. It was almost midnight when, at the very end of the line, crawling along slowly, came a big old rat, silver with age. It was the boss of the plague. "Are they all in, my old friend?" asked the piper. "They're all in, brother," replied the silver rat. "And how many were there?" 999,999, including you. "Including me." "Then go and join them, old friend, till we meet again." And the silver rat jumped into the river and disappeared. The piper had kept his end of the bargain and went off to his bed at the inn. And for the first time in a long, long while, the citizens of Hamelin slept peacefully through the night, and the poet was able to start at last on a new poem. The next morning, just after 9 o'clock, the Pied Piper arrived outside the town hall, where all the well-rested and breakfasted citizens had already gathered and were cheering and applauding the politician. "All of your rats went for a swim in the river last night," called out the piper, "and I guarantee not one will return. There were 999,999 at 1 gold sovereign a head. It's time to count out my wages." "Just a moment, stranger," smiled the politician. 1 sovereign a head means 1 sovereign. Where are the heads?" The taxpayers roared with laughter, but the piper had not expected this devious ploy. He shook with rage, and his eyes boiled, burned red. "The heads," he hissed. "You want the heads? Then go and find them in the river." "Oh, I see," boomed the politician confidently. "You're refusing to keep the terms of our arrangement. 1 sovereign per head. Where are the heads?" The crowd joined in with one voice. "Where are the heads? Where are the heads? Show us the heads!" "Order, order!" cried the politician, in charge once more. He turned to the piper and said, "We could refuse even to pay you 1 penny. but we're a big society, and you have been used to us. Why not accept a token, 10 sovereigns for your trouble before you leave?" "Keep your 10 sovereigns," replied the piper poisonously. "If you do not pay me, I will be paid by your children." And then he pulled his hat down over his eyes, turned away, and left the town without speaking to a soul. The taxpayers gave high fives and slapped each other on the back, and they laughed when the politician said the rat catcher had been caught in his own trap. But what made them laugh most of all was his threat of passing their debt on to their children. The next day was a Sunday, and they all went happily to church, looking forward to a Sunday lunch after Mass that hadn't been sampled by rats. But when everyone returned home to his or her house, their children had gone. "Our children! Where are the children?" was a terrible cry that was heard in every street. Then, limping from the east side of the town, came a little lame boy who was sobbing loudly, and this is what he told. While all the adults were at church, a wonderful music had started. Soon all the boys and girls who'd been left safely at home had run outside, following the magical sound to the square by the town hall. They found the Pied Piper there, playing his music just as he had on the night he had caught all the rats. Then the piper had walked quickly towards the east gate of the town, and all the children had followed, running, singing, clapping, and dancing to the music, as far as the foot of the mountain outside Hamelin. But when they got near, the mountain had opened up, and the piper had gone in, still playing his music. And all the children had danced after him, after which the mountain closed again. The only child left was a lame boy who couldn't keep up with the others. When they heard this story, the parents wailed in horror and distress. They ran with sledgehammers and pikes to the mountain and banged at the rock till darkness, searching for the opening. The politician, who had lost 3 little boys and 2 little girls, clawed at the stone with his bloodied hands, but it was useless. When night fell, the citizens had to return to Hamelin without their children. Only the cold face of the moon was witness to the dreadful sights and sounds of their grief. That's the end of that story.